guys, welcome to the Radiate Your Faith podcast. My name is Maddie Walco, and I'm a college softball player from the great state of Texas. And I'm so excited that you are tuning into the Radiate Your Faith podcast, where I hope you are encouraged to let the light of Christ shine through you in a way that allows people to see God through the way that you walk with Him. My prayer for you is that your faith is deepened, that it is strengthened, and that you are encouraged to radiate your faith. Hey guys, welcome to the Radiate Your Faith podcast. I'm so excited that you guys are joining me for this week. This week I have on a very special guest, which I say in every episode, but I do. This is Keen, and I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself to you guys.
All right. Hi, I'm Keen Kreuzler. I'm a recent transfer here to Angelo State, and I'm a part of the baseball team. And thank you for having me, Maddie.
You're welcome. So Keen and I met through FCA that we do at our school, which is where a lot of the people you've seen on recently are from. But we have a really good group of friends here that like play dominoes and go to FCA with Brett. And like we literally just went to like a Christmas lights, which was so fun. But today I'm super excited because we are going to be talking about God's timing in Keen's life in regards to baseball, but also just trusting God in general. So do you want to go ahead and share your story with the whole baseball thing?
Yeah. So I've been playing baseball pretty much my whole life, and I pretty much just coasted through just based on God's gifts that He gave me up until high school. And I've known pretty much my whole life that, I was a decent baseball player, but as I got older, I was smaller. I wasn't the biggest kid around. As I got older, people started growing, and I was just small. And once I got to high school, I went through a lot of adversity my first couple of years because I was so tiny, and I really battled a lot of adversity when it came to baseball and trying to be competitive on the baseball field and stuff like that. And I really just wanted to quit and give up. And my dad, my dad is a big supporter of me still, and he was like, you gotta see this through, and you just gotta put your trust in the Lord that He will give you the tools to be successful. Because my dad was the same way when it came to sports. He was small, and then in high school he grew a lot and was able to, he was given the tools, and my dad knew that was going to happen to me as well. So my parents really pushed me really hard to stick it out, and I eventually, I grew a lot, and God gave me the tools to be successful, and I was blessed with the ability to go play college baseball. And looking back, it really stood out to me what God was doing in my life. And at the time, it was so hard to, get past all that, but I'm really glad I stuck it out.
Yeah, no, I can totally relate. I am a very small softball player. I throw slow, all the things. And so I can relate. There was a season in my life where I was like, God, why are you calling me to play softball? Why are you calling me to do this if pretty much everybody is telling me you're too small to play, you don't throw hard enough, all these things. And we actually watched this movie for FCA, but it's called Facing the Giants. And I remember there was this one day where I just got so down on myself because it'd just been so negative towards me in regards to just playing. And there's a scene in the movie where David, he asks his dad, if God's calling me to do this whole football thing, why'd He make me so small and puny? Why would He do that if that's what He's calling me to? And his dad says, God made you so small to show how big He is. And I remember that, watching that clip when I was younger, it reminded me that my abilities that the Lord has given me is not dependent on my abilities, but it's dependent on just trusting God and allowing God to work through me on the softball field. If you've ever noticed in the Bible, God always uses the people nobody would choose. And I think that's kind of what has given me a lot of confidence, and I'm sure has given you a lot of confidence, is just trusting that if God's calling you to something, He's going to provide, and His glory is going to be shown through it as long as you're obedient and you trust Him. So what do you think you learned about God's plan through all that, looking back?
Well, at the time, everything seemed so impossible for me. And, it really shows that God can overcome any adversity that is thrown your way. And, He will prevail through anything that's thrown towards you. So, yeah, that's what I saw looking back the most.
I can see God's hand a lot looking back on my recruiting process too. Oh my gosh. I'm just like, there's no way.
Mhm.
But like, God is a God who makes a way where we don't see one. So it's
Mhm.
like, and he totally did that through my recruiting process. And I've seen his hand looking back at everything. And it's just so cool to like, to see that and like have like seeing how God has worked has given me so much like trust and hope
Mhm.
for the future.
Well, I guess that'll take me into college. So, I was given the gifts and I was given the opportunity to play college baseball. And out of high school, I wasn't very heavily recruited because I was a late bloomer. So I wasn't really on people's radars. And I got to go to TLU in Seguin. It's Texas Lutheran University. And I felt really blessed to go there and, going to college for the first time and going away from home and not being a part of, the family or not being at home with the family anymore. As time went on at college, my relationship with God struggled. I didn't spend as much time in the Word, and I wasn't spending time with other Christians, and that which we're called to do. And my relationship with God struggled a lot, and I really just saw a downfall in my day-to-day life. And my freshman year was tough, but God blessed me with some really great people at TOU towards the end, and they got me back on the right track as far as getting in the Word, spending time with fellow Christians, and obviously I was given an opportunity to transfer and come here, where I was blessed with even more people to be a part of my journey with God. And yeah, I mean, just looking back, keep looking back on God working in my life. It's amazing to see like how much He has done to build our relationship, because it's a two-way street. God's always working with us to build the relationship, and it's all on us to help bridge that gap and spend more time with Him.
Yeah.
And just being a part of Angelo with all of the FCA and all the Christian related activities I've been doing, my relationship with God has been through the roof, and I feel like I'm being equipped to do God's work. So yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I definitely think there's got to be a lot of grace in regards to the seasons where we are walking in the valleys. I went through the same thing my freshman year of college. I did not make the greatest decisions. Like I loved the Lord, but it was really hard to navigate the line between like walking in a way that God is the Lord of my life or walking in a way that like I'm living my own life and then God's like kind of off to the side. Sometimes he's in it, sometimes he's not. And I think that's also just a part of like the growing process, especially when you get to college and you're on your own. For a lot of people, their faith is their parents' faith. Like at least for me growing up, like I didn't really know the Lord until I kind of found it on my own. But like I would go to church, like my mom would talk about Jesus, my dad would talk about Jesus. And I think college is such an interesting time because it gives us a space to navigate, is this really something that's like my relationship with God, or have I been making my parents' relationship with God my relationship with God? So I think there's a lot of grace for that, and it's so cool that God like gave you people to help point you back. He's so gracious in how he does that. But I also like that you said that like it's a two-way street. Like we have to go out of our way to make time to pursue the Lord. And I think I love this saying that God is a gentleman. Like he never goes and like forces you to spend time with him. Like he wants to be chosen just as much as we want to. So how would you say you've seen your relationship with God change since, going from that season at TLU to coming here?
So, God for me at TLU was kind of the relationship was kind of a pick and choose kind of thing. Like I chose when I wanted to, when I needed that relationship. And now it's a 24/7, 365 relationship with him. And I'm always praying. I'm always talking to him. I'm always looking for him for guidance and advice because my life, with the way baseball is always a very uncertain thing. And I always ask for him for guidance and forgiveness and all that sort of thing in my life. And it's just been a really huge change in my life is when my relationship changed, when my relationship improved with God. And it's been such a great thing to be a part of.
How do you think that's changed your like view of baseball, like going into baseball before and after?
It makes baseball feel so much easier as far as the struggles and knowing that God, nothing's too big for him and nothing is too small for him as well. And like I just found out yesterday that I'm injured. I hurt my shoulder, and I trust in the timing of everything that this happened for a reason, and that this happened now for a reason. And I'm not worried. I'm just gonna put the time in, put the work in, and trust that this is what God wanted and what needed to happen for me to learn a lesson or prepare
Mhm.
myself for the season better.
Yeah. And I think one of the coolest things about like loving the Lord and being his is the fact that our identity is no longer tied to sports performance. And I think that's something that a lot of people who play college sports, high school sports struggle with, is just the fact that they think, well, if I'm not performing on the field, if I'm not getting to play baseball, softball, volleyball, whatever, they're just like, who am I?
Mhm.
Like, where's my worth? And I think injuries give us such an interesting perspective on the whole concept of our identity, because when that's taken away, what's left? And I think that gives you a really good check of your heart of like, do I still feel like I'm valued? Do I not? Like, how is this impacting me? And then going back to scripture and seeing like what God says about who you are and your value. And I find this is so, I love when God does this, but literally yesterday I was reading in Romans, and it talks about how God, um, we're like the clay and he's the potter, right? And it talks about how, like, who are we to ask God, well, why did you make me this way? Or like why am I how I am? Or like what's happening to me? And it kind of brings you to this humble place of like, God created you for a purpose. God put you through things for a purpose, and like God chose you. Like if you are a child of God, God chose you, and like that's such a humbling thing. I don't know. I think that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
So moving forward, how has your relationship just taught you to rely on the Lord, like before when your faith was kind of wishy-washy to now when it's a little bit more solid?
So, now I look at so baseball is something I can really apply and relate to really well. So, before my relationship was improved, I put way too much dependence on my performance on the field.
Mhm.
And I prayed to God about only performing good and asking him to give me strength, which obviously I want, but I put way too much on my success in the
Yeah.
game. And now I look on it and that baseball is not my identity. And I ask God to help me to perform the best of my ability on the field, but I give you glory no matter what.
Yeah.
And so that really has made a big impact on me, and just knowing that it doesn't matter how I perform on the field, I'm always going to have that relationship with God. It's never going to change, and I'm never going to let it slip anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's so much freedom in knowing that our identity is not tied to our performance. And I mean, there's a lot of pressure to perform, especially in college sports. But there's this girl named Grace Lyons at OU, and she kind of used this as their motto for the year that they won one of their national championships. And she said, it's already written, just go have fun with it. And I think that's a really good way to look at athletic performance, is like God already has like the result in his hands. So you might as well go out and have fun and just trust him with it. Regardless if it's a win or a loss, you give God glory. And I think that's another really humbling thing just in general. So Keen is also a farmer, rancher,
Farmer and rancher. Yes.
farmer and rancher. And so I always love talking about this because I also feel like that kind of lifestyle gives you such an interesting perspective on the Lord. So what have you seen or learned about God through all of that?
Oh man. Well, there's been so much I've learned, because farming and ranching, there is pretty much everything is out of your control. It's all up to the Lord to provide. So, you know, I'll use so last year, for example, we were in a drought on the farm, and my dad and me pretty much run it. And just looking back on it, we were like, what are we going to do? We didn't know if there was going to be rain coming. Are we going to spend the money to prepare for rain if it comes, or are we going to cheap out and not spend the money and then have an average crop even if the rain comes? And we ended up trusting in the Lord, and looking back on it, it was one of the best decisions we could have made, because we spent all the proper money, we prepared, and God gave us rain, and we had one of the best years ever. And looking back on it, there was other neighboring farms that didn't do the same, and it all goes back to that parable about farmers preparing
Yeah.
for rain or just kind of skimming out and not doing it properly.
I was about to say there's literally a parable about that
Yep.
exact story in the Bible, which is so cool. I love that God does that. But I think that's so true, is like there's so many times where we like don't trust God, like we have doubts, and so the way that we prepare for things as if it's not going to happen. And God calls us to have faith, which the definition of faith and hope is to put your trust in something that you can't see. Like the Bible says in I believe it's in Romans, it says that hope that is seen is no hope at all, which is, I was like, whoa, what? Because it talks about like if you're gonna put your hope in something that you can already see, that's not hope. Like you just see it, and I think that is such a cool thing, is like sometimes like I think we prepare without hoping. We just prepare in a way that's, we don't trust God. And so if God does actually bring about that blessing, the foundation isn't laid right, and everything kind of just crumbles after that.
Yeah.
So you're a transfer. I'm a transfer. How was going through the transfer portal for you, and how did that influence your trust in God?
So, looking back on it, it was pretty tough because there was so many uncertainties. I had the schools that I wanted to go to, and I knew I had the ability to go to a lot of different schools. And the big thing that it came down to was the baseball program good, and did they have the degree that I wanted? And the big thing that separated Angelo was they had the best of both worlds. And that was one of the big things that stood out to me. But one of the best things that wasn't on paper was the Christianity and how much God is working in this place. And I'm so grateful that I was able to pick this place, because it set me up for building my relationship back up with God. And it really, and just trusting in the Lord that he would put me in the right place, that he was working from the time towards my end of my TLU time there, and then coming to here, where how he pointed me in the right direction to get back to him. It's really a cool thing to look back on and know that that's what he wanted the whole time, was for me to transfer and then come here so I can rebuild that relationship with him.
Yeah, and God is so intricate. All this is reminding me, there's a story in Exodus. So whenever Moses was leading the Israelites out of Egypt, and Pharaoh finally let them go, there was a shortcut path that they could have taken, but the Lord told them to take a separate path. And I'm sure all of them were thinking, like, why is God doing that? Like, if there's a shortcut, why wouldn't we take a shortcut? And it says in the Bible that he sent him that way because it put them in a position to be right by the Red Sea. Now, if you remember this story, Moses parts the Red Sea, and that's how they defeat the Egyptians. But if they would have taken the shortcut, they wouldn't have been by the Red Sea. And I think that story just kind of points back to how God intentionally positions us to walk in victory and to walk with him. And I think it's cool that God, did that for you, and he provided you a space to go back to him. Thinking of my own recruiting story and transfer story and all that, I remember going through my recruiting process and, being like, God, I don't know what to do, because I had an offer here, but I also had another offer to a really big school, and it was like a dream school. And I'll share this story because it's kind of silly, but I went to this like Christmas party at my church back home, and this is right after I like faithfully chose Angelo over my dream school, which is, again, crazy. I would sound crazy for doing it. That's a whole nother story, which, by the way, for those of you who know, I love the number 27, and that's like my God wink number. I'm going to be doing an episode on all of the 27 stuff, but besides the 27 stuff, this was another thing. I go to this Christmas party, and we're playing this game where you like the right and left game, where you like trade bags. So they're like, whenever they went to the right, then you'd like move the bag to the right, that game. We were playing that game, and there was this box, this like puppy box, and it was so cute. I was like, oh, I know there's cute socks in that box. I wanted the puppy box. And so we're playing the game, and I have it in my hands at the very end, and I'm like, yes, like I got the puppy box. And then they said like something to the right, and I was like, no. So the person next to me got this super cute puppy box. I'm like, dang it, like I wanted that. And then I ended up getting this like dingy looking red bag, and I was like, okay, sure, fine. So I'm like sadly like opening like my box, and I look over and she opens her puppy box, which I wanted, and she pulls out these super ugly like toe socks. And I was like, gross, like, ooh, okay. And I was like, fine, whatever. So I'll like look in my box, and I pull out these super nice Columbia socks, like nice Christmas
Yeah.
socks, guys. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I got the cutest socks ever from this dingy red bag. And like in that moment, I kind of like had this like aha moment of, I think that's exactly how God works sometimes. There were these two bags. One looked pretty on the outside, one looked super dingy. And then, not to say Angelo's dingy by any means, love Angelo, but it's like, it's a dream
Yes.
school.
Yes.
So in comparison, it was like, dang, but God's the one that already knows what socks in the bag, right?
Yes.
And so going through that, it made me realize, like, if God is pointing me in a direction, even if it doesn't look like what I would pick, God already knows what's going to happen there, what's better for us. And I think that's like a call of faith, is whenever God's pointing you in a direction, you have to choose to deny yourself and walk faithfully. Because if he's calling you somewhere, the Bible says he works all things together for our good and for his glory. We should trust him and walk in obedience to know that God is bringing us to a place to either grow us, bless us, or provide in a way that we wouldn't if we would make our own decisions. So
I mean, this has been great. I love talking about the Lord and my story, and I love listening to what you have to offer as far as your relationship with God. And I'm just blessed to be here.
Yes. All right, guys. Well, this was fun.
Yeah.
But I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast episode. I've been bugging Keen to be on the podcast for a while. And I've definitely seen like God has been continuing to work in Keen. So I'm sure he'll be back on at some point. But God has been working there, y'all. And I'm super excited to see what God's going to do. But I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to check us out on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, or you can get merch at www.radiateyourfaith.com. If you guys don't follow my Instagram, I would love for you guys to, because I'm trying to keep track of like who's where, and so it just kind of helps me out. But yeah, I hope you guys love this episode and that you were encouraged to radiate your faith.